Hi, this is Robert from the CIA Ops Academy, and I want to speak to you today about Microsoft Flow. So if you want to know who I am and what I do, you can hit me up on Twitter at DirectorCIA or on the about.me website you see there. Now what we're going to cover in this session is we'll look at the landscape and we'll talk about some automation, extensibility, different versions of Flow that are available, and then give you some takeaways. Now, but before we launch into our look at Flow, let's have a bit of a think about a few things. So one of the things I'd like you to think about during this presentation is many of the applications that people have on their desktops today already contain a huge amount of automation power. Now, things like Office, Excel, Word contain macros. And I think part of the challenge is that not a lot of people actually use those macros to any great extent. So you probably already have a huge amount of power and the ability to do automation, but perhaps not taking advantage of it. So hopefully this will give you some inspiration to go out there and look at automating not only the processes that we cover here, but also look at automating things in other applications that you may have on your desktop, typically things like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and even Outlook, which has the ability, for example, to automatically route emails using rules to move them away from your inbox. Now, the reason that we approach this is that we want to be able to firstly give ourselves some more time, so we need to free up some time. We also need to have the ability to use these programs to really make our lives easier, to do the mundane things. Now, if you think about it, in today's world, we have so much technology, but really we're probably not making a great use of it. We're actually overloading ourselves with technology rather than spending a few minutes up front and allowing ourselves to really do a little bit of development and then apply the automation processes. Now, things like Flow aren't unique. There are other services out there that have been doing similar things for a long time. So services like If This Then That and Zapier, just to name a two. But the big advantage we've got when it comes to Flow is that it is with a Microsoft product and it is also incorporated into our Office 365 suite. So the landscape that we're looking at when it comes to automation processes is that we have tools already like InfoPath and SharePoint Designer. Now, part of the challenges of those two products are there are no new versions. They're going to be supported into 2026, but there is no SharePoint Designer 2016, for example. We're at 2013. Now, SharePoint Designer was the way we created workflows and we automated processes in SharePoint. Now, that is, I suppose, going away. So the focus you probably should be looking at, again, is moving away from those products. But importantly, remember that they will be supported until 2026. Now, if you have tenants that are EDU Office 365 tenants, then you will have the ability to access and use Microsoft Forms. Now, Microsoft Forms give you some basic ability to collect information, to do surveys, and typically aimed at the classroom environment. But remember, Microsoft Forms is currently only available to those Office 365 education SKUs. So the two products that we have that are recently been released by Microsoft relatively is Power Apps and Microsoft Flow. Now, these products are in use today. They will integrate with your Office 365, where Power Apps will allow you to, for example, create applications to capture data. So this could be thought of in some ways as a replacement for InfoPath, and Microsoft Flow allows you to automate processes much like SharePoint Designer did. So when it comes to that sort of environment, again, we should be looking and thinking about Power Apps and Microsoft Flow, and they're very different from the original InfoPath and SharePoint Designer, very much modernized to work in the world we face today in the cloud. So just reinforcing that Power Apps and Flow are the tools for business users for building business applications in SharePoint. So that means that these tools are available to all your users by default. Now, if we focus on Flow, we see that it's going to give you the ability to automate processes across applications and services. Now, this means that it's not just limited to, for example, SharePoint. It's not just limited to OneDrive. It allows you to pull and work with services such as your email also such as Power BI even, and also to work with third-party applications. So you can pull in feeds from Twitter, you can work with Facebook, you can work with a huge range of web apps. Now, speaking of that, why don't we just launch into a demo so we can actually show you exactly how easy it is to create a flow. Now, what I've got here, you'll see, is I've got a standard SharePoint Online list. It's basically a simple custom list. It has basically one field, which is the title field, and it is at this URL, which I will copy at this point in time. Now, what we do is we can get to Flow via two ways. We can go to flow.microsoft.com, or we can go into the app launcher here, and you'll see that we have an icon for Flow. Now, once we launch Flow, it will look something like this. Now, you'll see across the top I've got my flows, templates, approvals, and so on. So what I'm going to do is going to have a look at my flows. Now, you'll notice that I've got a number of flows already set up that I'm using. You'll see that I get the ability to turn these on and off. So if I'm working on them, I can turn them off. I have information on the list who I shared with, plus we've got the ability to delete and save as if we need. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create one from a blank. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start here, and I want to connect firstly to a Twitter service, right? So let me just type in Twitter. You'll see that the Twitter service comes up, and what I'm going to do is select it. So what that's going to do is it's going to say when a new tweet is posted, that's going to be the trigger. So that's going to kick off this automation process. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say anytime you see the text in a tweet that says Office 365, that's going to be your trigger. Now, once we've got the trigger, what are we going to do next? Now, we can add an action, or we can add a condition, an if-then statement, if you will. And we've also got this option here to switch case, to do a number of other things. But again, I'll keep it simple, and let's just do an action. So what I'm going to do, the action I want to do here is I actually want to do something in SharePoint. So I just type SharePoint here and select that. You'll see then I get a range of options of what I can do with SharePoint. You'll see I can get items, I can delete items, I can extract folders. What I'm going to do here is I want to go down and to find the item here that is create an item. Alright, so that's going to load in. Now that create an item requires two things. It's going to require a site address. So this is going to be the site that I just alluded to. So this is our marketing site. And once we have that, you'll see that it gives me the assets in that SharePoint list, in this case, the tweets list. So I'll select that. Okay, so what this is going to do is take a post, right, that happens in Twitter. It's then going to go into the SharePoint site, into the list, and then what it's going to do, what I want it to do is basically take the tweet text. So you'll see here when I select that, I can pull dynamic content from the other services I've connected to. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select the option called tweet text. So what it's going to do is it's going to put the body of the tweet inside the title field of my SharePoint list. So I'm happy with that. Okay, and then what I can do is go up here and give this a name. So I'll give this flow a name, and then what I'll do is just select the option here to create flow. So it's going to save it, and it's done. All right, so you'll see now when I have a look, you'll see that I have this flow here. If I want to go back in and edit it, I just need to select it. I can then go back in and update the flow and add the additional items. You'll see that the flow is currently turned on, so I can change it if I want. And as the flow runs, I'll be able to go in here and have a look at some information. So there are no runs yet. So what we'll do is we'll just pause and let that process actually trigger a few things so we can see what the results are. You'll see now that we've waited a little while, we do have some successful runs here. So let's just go in and have a look at the process here. So you'll see that I get little green indications here that the processes have completed. All right, so let's go in here and just look at this, and you'll see that the outputs are here in some detail. All right, now in the top right here, you'll see that I've got the ability to resubmit it if I want to, so we can rerun that flow if we need to. Now, obviously that will keep triggering every time it finds a tweet, and in theory now, if we go back to our SharePoint list that we created and refresh the page, what we should see in the title is exactly what we expect. So you'll see that we get the body of the tweets basically in our SharePoint, delivered to our SharePoint list from Flow, thanks to the fact that it is looking for tweets that mention the word Office 365 in there. So again, nice and easy. And if we go back to my flows, you'll see that that will continue to run there in the background. Okay, so why don't we head back to the slides here, and we can then continue on. Okay, so one of the other things to appreciate when it comes to Flow is that you don't need to start from scratch as I did. What we can do is we can go in there and we can pick from hundreds of existing templates. So let's pop back to our machine and let's just have a look at that. So up the top there, you'll see that I have my flows, which I'm working on, but you'll see that I also have the option here called templates. Now, again, I can pick from a huge range of templates. Important to note that not only are the templates available from Microsoft, as you see here, but they're also available from third parties. So if you want, if you are so inclined, once you've created a flow that works for you, you can publish it, ask for it to be published into this library. Now, obviously, it has to be vetted by Microsoft, and remember that you're not publishing the connection to your services, you're just connecting, giving people the schema, and then they go in and connect to their own services. So for example, here, if we wanted to save an Office 365 email attachment to our OneDrive for Business, we could select that, and then that would, and let's go in there and actually do that. So you'll go in there and you'll see, okay, this is what it needs to do. And you'll see at the moment it's connected via the accounts that I have set up. So I'm going to go in and create a flow, and it's going to basically take that template, put in my account details into that template, and then allow me to have that running in the background. Okay, so you'll see that we have the templated flow here. You'll see that it's triggered by an on new email from our Office 365 account. We select that, so it's looking in the inbox folder, and then what it's going to do is going to save those attachments. All right, so it's going to take the attachment, which is the dynamic content here that we pull from there, and it's going to go in and create a file for us. And you'll notice here that we're getting this ability here to apply conditions and then take actions. All right, so we can start connecting all these services, adding actions and adding more conditions, and then beginning to branch off from there. But in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to delete this so it isn't running. So remember, the important thing here is that you don't have to start from scratch. You can go into the templates area and you can select from a wide range of templates that already exist, and you can, for example, filter down using the options here. Now, while I'm here, the other thing I'll point out is the services. So if we select the services option in the top menu here, this is a list of all the services that you can connect to. You know, some of them are premium options, and we'll cover that a little bit later with the different flow plans, but you'll see it is quite a number here of services that you can actually connect to, and they're not necessarily Office 365 or Microsoft. You'll see that we also have the ability to create and connect to third-party services like Slack, Pinterest, all sorts of things there that we can now generate a flow around. So very, very handy option for us to work with. So the basics of it here, as you've seen, is that we are able to connect to a service. We're able to authenticate. Once we've authenticated, we will go in and select our options, and you'll see that we get the ability then to interact with the service, and we can also inject our dynamic content. So for example, what we see on the screen here, you've got send to email addresses and things like that. So again, it makes it nice and easy. You don't need to have any code, you don't need to write any code. You can just basically select from the blocks, connect the blocks together, and then determine what those blocks do by selecting the options that are presented to you. Now, flow doesn't have to be a linear option. You see that you can do branching, you can do conditional statements, you can check to see whether conditions have been set and have been completed before returning back to the flow. So it has all of those programming abilities that you can create, again, without the need to go in and create code. And importantly, as I mentioned, we're looking at the fact that it's now integrating with lots and lots of different systems via the APIs. And if you wanted to, you could go in and create custom APIs for your own applications and allow them to be serviced via Flow as well. So you've got a standard group of apps from Microsoft and third parties, and you've also got the option to create your own APIs to link any other applications that aren't there. Now, if we have a look at what's available for creating business applications these days, we have the 3 citizen developer type tools. So we have Power BI, we have Power Apps, and Microsoft Flow, which we have talked about. So again, in general terms, Power BI allows you to measure and report. Power Apps actually takes action, so it allows you to put in information, capture information in forms, and automate, as we've spoken about, is what Flow allows you to do. And again, you'll see that you can work with it as developers as well, so we can connect it to SQL. You've got the Service Fabric there. You've got BizTalk connectivity if you want to as well. Now, all of this is basically living on the common data model and working with connectors and gateways. So that makes it a lot easier and a lot more consistent to work with. So let's talk about the extensibility here. Now, it's important to remember or to consider that Flow basically is something that is based on Azure Logic Apps. So Flow is actually a simplified version, has a simplified interface over Azure Logic Apps, right? And that then is connecting to the APIs that are either managed already out there or to the custom APIs. So if we pop back to our machine quickly here and go into Azure. So what I've done is fired up the Azure, and you'll see here I've gone into the Logic Apps Designer, and you'll see that I get very much similar look and feel to what was with Flow. You'll see that I have the ability here to pick from a range of templates, and let's just pick this one and go in here. All right, so I'm going to use this template, very similar idea here, but again, it's going to give you basically more control than you would get in Flow. Okay, so in this case, it's going to ask me to sign in. You'll see I get the ability, if it was set up, to connect to an on-premises gateway, which we will come to. All right, so this is going to be a connection to the service. I'm going to connect with my Office 365 account because I haven't done that as yet. So that will mean that I can connect to my SharePoint online, and then I can use that as a service here. So now, so I've got the green ticks. Go continue with these 2 services, and then again, same sort of deal. I connect to the site addresses, the list name, and send an email. So I'm not going to go into that and do that, but you'll notice in the designer here that I have some more power around run. I have a designer, which gives me more access to the low-level code. And if I want to, I can actually go into a code view here. So basically, it's using sort of JSON to be able to do that. You'll see that I've got my templates as mentioned, and again, we've got a list of available APIs that we can connect against. So remember that what we've got here is that our Flow can be extended, I suppose, or improved using our Logic Apps here. So that is also available to you, and again, gives you more power and generally a little bit more flexibility than what you get directly in Office 365, which is delivered only through the browser. Okay, so in essence, we've got our 3 citizen developer or power user development tools for Office 365. We've got Power BI, Power Apps, and Microsoft Flow. Then that's being able to pull information from cloud services, so SharePoint Online, and you'll see that we've also got the ability, as you saw previously, to connect to on-premises data, and we can synchronize that, and then that will be connected through our common data model and our operations store, and we can then start working on that, and it's all covered by the security model that governs things like Office 365. Now on the right, you'll notice that there are pro development tools. We mentioned that you can use what's there in Azure to give you more control, but you can also use tools like Visual Studio to get even more granular if you want. Now, the great thing is that Logic Apps and Flows can interact together. You can have one call the other if you want, as we've listed here. You'll see that we're doing a HTTP post, and again that's calling from Flow and going via Logic Apps. So they basically are two separate services. They are effectively contained in the same tenant. You may have to add some credits to your Azure environment to actually get the ability to work with Logic Apps, but it certainly is there. Now, remember that we talked about the ability to build your own templates for your own scenarios, and if you want to, you can share those out with anybody else and make them public. And what we're looking at is the ability to lock down templates to a specific company as well, if you want to be able to do that. So with that, let's just pop back to the machine and I'll show you a few instances of some more complex apps in Microsoft Flow and what I've been actually using them for. Okay, so let's go back to the Flow Manager here. Okay, so you'll see that we've got our recorded tweets. I'm just going to turn that off so we don't fill the list up too quickly. And you'll see that the first one here that I'll point out is basically an email notification for survey responses. So what happens here is that I use Skype for Business to run regular webinars, and people register for those via a type form. So they go into a type form, put in their email address, and then what happens is once they've done that, that triggers this email to be sent to that user and basically thanks them for signing up and gives them the details of the upcoming webinar. So again, very much like your standard webinar registration process. Now, what I also do is after I've sent that email, you'll see that what I do is I take the information that was recorded during registration and I put it into a SharePoint list. Now, this list gives me the ability, obviously, to capture the information, to categorize it, to sort it by date, to tag people, and to add extended information about that user. I can also look at which users have been returning on a regular basis to attend webinars. So by sending that information from Typeform back into SharePoint, it's given me a lot more flexibility, a lot more power, and if I wanted to, I could then kick off additional workflows around that. But again, great way of capturing information from Typeform, getting a confirmation email sent to the user with the details of the webinar, and then recording that information into a SharePoint list for me to analyze later. Now, the other one you'll see here that I've got is something about tweets. So what I'm doing is I basically am setting up the trigger to be a recurrence. Now, that recurrence is once a day. Then what that recurrence does is actually goes out to a list that I have in SharePoint. Again, now what that list has is that list has a range of tweets. So it has basically a tweet for every day of the year. So it has 365 items in a list, and they're categorized basically by date. So you'll see that my SharePoint goes out to a list, okay, and pulls in an item, and then what happens is that it then searches the item that it gets, and it looks for a certain date. So all the items, all the tweets basically have a column that indicates which day that I want those tweets to be sent. So when that condition is met, so when the item that is pulled out from the list matches today's date, so UTC now, right, it will then post that tweet, and then what it will also do is it will update that item and increment the date by a year. So with 365 items, what I can then do is simply basically have a tweet a day, and then once that has been tweeted, it can reschedule that for the same day next year. So therefore I can create a list of tweets that will just continue to circle around without the need for me to intercept them or work anything else with there. So you'll see that what I've done is I've created two of these. So I have a tweets that go out in the morning and tweets that go out in the afternoon. So they're pulling from two different separate lists. And again, what I can do is use that sort of automation process. So what it's allowing me to do is to, again, be visible, to share my information regularly on social media via Twitter, and to do that in an automated way and give me some more control at the back end thanks to the SharePoint list. So if I want to, I can reschedule the dates for the tweets, so I might want to focus on a particular topic, so I can move the dates around for that. I've also recording information about when it was sent out, how often they were sent out. So again, SharePoint's giving me that ability, and thanks to Flow, I can pull the information from my SharePoint list and push it out to a third-party service like Twitter. Okay, so basically, as mentioned, you can go in and you can create your own custom API, right? So we can fully extend this thanks to what Microsoft has made available to us. And again, if you want a bit of a developer, you can go in there and create your custom APIs and work within your organization there. Now, remember that if you are going to do that, when you create a connector to connect to a service, you'll need basically to use the HTTP Web API, basic OAuth or API key, and again the triggers are going to be webhooks, so they're going to be a recommended way of doing that. But for more developer information, see some of the resources you'll be provided with at the end of the session. Now what you can also do is you can embed the view of your flow inside an app if you want, so you can use the iframe to do that, and again there's URL there that you can have a look at to give you more information about how to do that. Of course, remember the thing here is that flows are generally available to all your users in Office 365. So Office 365 gives your users the ability to go in and create their own flows and work with flows to automate their processes. And again, you might want to present those differently to those users. Now, we mentioned slightly before that there is an on-premises gateway. You install that from the Power Apps portal. And again, this allows you to connect things not only like Flow, but also Power Apps and Power BI to on-premises environments such as SharePoint and SQL Server. And again, you just need to obviously sign in and register, build your connections, and then you can pull information from your apps on-prem connected to services that you may have in products like Office 365 and bring it all together to automate everything in one hit. So it's very powerful when you look at the ability to extend these tools from their cloud location into your on-prem environment, but also to connect with third-party cloud-based services. So what does the future hold for Microsoft Flow? So at this stage, what Microsoft is looking to bring is a couple of things. Firstly, it's going to give us a more powerful administration environment. It will allow us to define which apps and services are business data, which are non-critical, and which are non-business data. So in this case, you might specify that SharePoint is business data, and you may set up a rule or classification that prevents your service like SharePoint, your business service, connecting to public services. Okay, so maybe it won't allow a flow to send information from a SharePoint list to something like Gmail or another third-party service. Now, you can go in and classify those, set all those up, and then those rules will be obeyed by anybody creating a flow inside your organization. You'll also get the ability to do data loss prevention. Okay, so you'll be able to control the flow of information, and again, it'll be based on the classifications that you have to protect your documents and your information. And again, it will be able to give you the ability to have a central control for all of this. Now, Microsoft again is looking to allow you to scale out these applications and data and potentially move the solutions across environments by packaging. So if you have tenants in different locations in different data centers, you've got to package these up and deploy them across data centers. So at this point in time, they're limited to the data center or the tenant they were created in. So Microsoft is looking to extend that ability and allow you to have that flexibility when it comes to Flow. So the idea again with the data loss you'll see here, I've got the data groups, is to prevent data loss. Again, you can determine business data and non-business data, manage it via policies, and again, they're going to add lots more things like info tips, blocks, and also the ability to justify a flow. So if you create a flow that may need to be justified, or its connection to certain services you may need to justify before it goes live. So again, lots and lots of features that Microsoft's looking to add to the environment here. Now, we'll also hopefully see the ability to co-author and to publish to an app source. So we'll be able to upload those to a library, internal and probably external as well, and also the ability to create from our mobile devices. So again, more and more integration, especially with mobile devices. But again, this may change, but keep an eye on it because things are happening very quickly in this space. Now, obviously, we've got the ability to connect with our organizational gallery. I think one of the big advantages we'll see here is the connection to things like Dynamics 365 to work with not only CRM data but general ledger data and so on. And we're looking at hopefully the ability to get applications around Flow and Power Apps from third-party providers. So an ISV can create those and then push those out and allow people to consume them, and probably, hopefully, for them to make some money if they are able to provide good solutions. So the bit of the roadmap that I took from a Microsoft presentation at Ignite 2016, so this may vary obviously, but what we should see around this sort of time frame are the options here. And again, some of them may be already delivered and some of them I think are pretty much on the way. Now, what about the availability of Power Apps? How do we of Flow? How do we actually get this? So the good thing that Microsoft has done is it's made a free version of Flow. So you can sign up with a Microsoft account and you'll get 750 Flow runs per month. Now, if you have Office 365 or Dynamics 365, you'll get a base of 2,000 flows per user per month there. Now, there are individual Flow plans available, so you can get 4,500 or 1,500 and the full premium connectivity. So again, if you want to connect to some of those premium services, you may have to look at some of those upmarket Flow plans. Now, because we've talked a fair bit about Power Apps as well, you'll notice that there are plans here for Power Apps 1, 2 and what you get standard with Office 365. So they are also available and will be varied depending on the plan that you subscribe to. Alright, so how do we work this all out? So, for example, if you've got 1,000 users with Flow for Office 365 and 200 users with Flow Plan 2, in the tenant, so this is shared across all the users as I understand it, you get 1,000, you get 2,000 per user times 1,000 plus 15,000 times the 200 you paid for with Flow Plan 2. That gives you about 5 million flows across your organization per month, which is a hell of a lot when you stop and think about it. And remember, a flow is from beginning to end. So if you've got something that triggers every second, that's going to be a flow every second. But if you've got something that only runs once a day, or when it's triggered when an email comes in, obviously the flow runs will be much lower. And if you need to, you can go out and purchase additional runs for your tenant, and you can purchase those in chunks of 50,000 runs per month. So the takeaways. All right, so Flow is an easy way to connect to many different data sources inside and outside Office 365. So you can connect to your on-prem environment, you can connect to things like Twitter, Facebook, and third-party applications, plus your standard Office 365 services like Outlook, SharePoint, and whatnot. Flows allow you, in essence, to automate business processes. So what you can do is you can take repetitive tasks and you can automate those so you don't have to do them and you save time. They run consistently and they run regularly. So again, the example here I've got is the social media posting. I do that on a regular basis. I've automated that process so I don't need to worry about that. It's just running in the background, all thanks to Flow. Now, when we combine Flow with Power Apps, so Power Apps gives us the ability to create applications, forms if you want, and we can now deliver a complete solution that we can also push out to mobile devices. So if you're looking at capturing data and then taking action on it after you've captured that, again, don't overlook Power Apps combined with Flow. And again, remember, our Flow can be utilized with on-premises resources, SharePoint, SQL to pull data from there and work with cloud-based systems as well. Needless to say, that Flow is continually improving. It's a fairly new service for Microsoft, so we're going to see lots and lots of improvements coming down the pipeline. Now, one of the challenges, one of the good things, potentially challenging things, it's going to create an army or enable an army of citizen developers. So that means that people who don't have any formal coding experience have the ability to use these tools to create solutions. Now, that obviously can be good and it can be bad, because people without formal programming may end up doing the wrong thing or may end up creating infinite loops. So one of the recommendations is that everybody probably needs to learn a little bit of coding, so something you can look at running inside your organization. But if you're looking to use Flow yourself, then certainly make sure that you do understand the very fundamentals of coding And again, it can be something that is used to really, really reduce costs and to allow the individual at the coalface to create the automation processes that they require to get their jobs done more efficiently. So there's a list of resources that are available, and the slides will be available after the presentation. And I will leave you with, I suppose, a single thought here, a last thought here. Now, the flow that we've talked about was basically a range of blocks that we put together to create or to do a process we nominated. Now, in my thinking, it's certainly going to be possible for you to define that outcome and then give it to a machine to do, because the machine just needs to work through the blocks that it has, put them together until it gets the desired output. So I see that this may be a step in the direction of machines coding machines sort of thing. So again, if we start looking at the machine being able to build using a defined set of tools, once it's completed that, it can then create, reuse subroutines and processes the way humans do when they're coding. So Flow may be a bit of a preview of what we're going to see with machines coding for themselves. As mentioned, this presentation is available at the following URL. So we'll give you a moment or two here just to go and write that URL down or take a screenshot so that you can go and download that presentation and get all the links and get all the resources. Now, with that said, I thank you very much for taking the time to watch this presentation. I hope you've got value from it. Please remember the additional resources that I have available for people around things like SharePoint, Office 365, Azure, and some of the resources there, again, that you can consume for free to keep up to date with Office 365, particularly my blog, podcast, and newsletter. Encourage you to send me any feedback via Twitter, email, Facebook, or via Skype for Business. Now, with that, I'd like to thank you very much for your time and wish you all the best working with Microsoft Flow.